Hey, you guys, it's Mo. And for those of you who are new to this case, I am using the Whiteboard of Truth because this case is all the crazy, but it can be kind of boiled down to a few kind of pertinent facts. So, this case is about a family. I need to get a bigger whiteboard of truth for this mobile whiteboard of truth. Can boil down to a family. So Chris and Melissa Wolfenbarger were very young when they got married. They got married in their teens because Melissa was pregnant with their first child. And then she became pregnant with their second child very shortly after the first child. It was not a stable relationship. There were allegations of DV and, infidelity. So, where this case gets a little interesting is who Melissa is related to, because Melissa's mom and dad, and this will become important for later, turned out to be, well, infamous and responsible for 5 homicides labeled the Flint River killings in the early to late 70s, 80s kind of time frame. So this was unknown at the time that this incident started, or this case kind of started. So this happened around 1998 to 1999. Again, there are a lot of kind of holes in very concrete or definitive timelines in this case, but it's generally agreed that 1998, around Thanksgiving, was the last confirmed time that everyone agrees that Melissa was seen. Sadly, and you'll come to know this, Melissa had a very chaotic childhood. Her older sister gave birth to a stillborn baby and went to jail for improper disposal of that baby. Melissa actually discovered the dead baby. So, from the defense, the story was that Melissa's disappearance has less to do with Christopher and more to do with her serial unaliving parents, though her mother was basically accused of accessory after the fact in moving the bodies and not the actual person that red rummed the Flint River decedents. She still was greatly involved with helping her husband elude justice for many years. So Melissa's parents do file a missing persons report. Now, prior to her disappearance, Melissa had signed permanent custody of her 2 children to Christopher's mother. Now, this will be a hotly contested point between the state and the defense. Basically, the state and Melissa's parents are going to claim that she would never knowingly leave her children. She would never knowingly, abruptly leave her children's life, when it looks like in reality, as a young mother, maybe struggling with not having the best parental role models, and that tumultuous early 20s part of your life, wasn't handling it very well, but had enough love for her children that she made the difficult choice to relinquish custody until she could get her life together, or she was aware that it was going to take a long time for her life to get together. But so that is kind of one of the big differences between the defense story and the state story. And the reason there has to be 2 different stories is because in 2000 thereabouts, about 6 to 8 weeks to months. Oh, please tell me this isn't okay. Internet might be glitchy. We are in storms. Sometime, I believe it was 6 to 8 months, I'll have to look at my notes, after she had disappeared, in a location very close to where the marital home was and where Christopher had previously worked, a skull was found sort of in the middle of the street, having been dragged there allegedly by a dog. So basically, a skull was found, and for whatever reasons, that didn't prompt a closer look at the location area for any other various and sundry body parts until nearly 2 months later, where limbs were found. So arms, legs, but not a torso. The torso has never been found. But the tragedy here in the investigation is that it was kind of foobar from the beginning because the skull, it had decomposed to such a degree within the plastic bags that they were unable to get any forensic information DNA wise. Now they were able to eventually ID this skull as belonging to Melissa with dental records, but that was only after the skull was mislabeled as coming from a white male youth. And there was a missing person in a very close county that did match that description. So the police assumed that this skull had nothing to do with the limbs they found, but also was a male. So for a long time, the state didn't have the skull and limbs linked at all. That wasn't until 2003 when DNA and cold case detectives were able to link the dad, Carl Patton Jr., to all of his Flint River shenanigans. And he was linked to the skull and limbs on DNA because his DNA popped hot for Melissa's remains because he was linked to it. So that's kind of where this entire case broke. Now, in further levels of what the effery, mom and dad start a campaign as soon as Carl Patton Jr. is convicted of his various and sundry crimes, and his wife, Norma, received immunity based on testimony, basically turning state's evidence on her husband in order to convict them. They were both under the delusional and completely delusional opinion that Carl Patton Jr. would get probation or parole if the only thing stopping that was basically Chris Wolfenbarger, Melissa's ex-husband, not having been convicted. So Norma took this delusional thought and, in all actuality, really did put in a lot of effort. She got linked in to a cold case true crime podcast and did a lot of lobbying, did a lot of media and pleas and advocacy for her daughter. But it does seem like with the sole purpose of getting Carl Jr. out of prison, not for getting, not for the primary reason to be getting justice for Melissa, they seem to, up until the day of his death, fully believe that Carl Patton Jr. would get probation, would be free to go if Chris Wolfenbarger was convicted of this crime. No, sadly, not any relation to the burger joint. So as all of this is going on, the police do focus in on Christopher because there was, a history of DV. Melissa, prior to Thanksgiving, had filed DV charges on Christopher, had signed out a temporary restraining order, but she did drop that restraining order a week later when they were to go in front of a judge to discuss the matter further. Now, the judge, in something that the state thinks was highly in poor taste of the judge dealing with a woman who's in a potential DV relationship, allowed Christopher and Melissa to talk to each other prior to the hearing on the PTO being dissolved or going forward and becoming more permanent. Now, the state will allege that Chris coerced her, and her being, trapped in this relationship, that went ahead and, dropped the charges. That being said, the state hasn't gone far enough. There are definitely things that point the finger at Christopher. The location of the body parts being very close to where he used to work and where the marital home was. But the investigation was FUBAR. The state, despite knowing in 2003 that these were the remains of Melissa Wolfenbarger, took their sweet A time going and testing the marital home, with luminol to see if any traced evidence of this dismemberment, which would definitely leave trace evidence, in whatever location it was done. They basically waited until 2015, I believe, to go luminol the house. So the saddest part about this case to me is that there will be no justice for Melissa because of the case that they presented with missing or lost evidence. The fact that this is a cold case and this is from Fulton County, Georgia, a locality that is plagued by lack of infrastructure corrosion that has led to basically infestation of both mice and cockroaches going through their evidence stores. Yeah, the cockroaches and mice are high as balls up in Georgia. So this case has been a cavalcade of we can't find the evidence, we lost the evidence. Sure, there were more reports, we lost them, and audio being cursed. It is from the same brain trust of Adrian Love, Fannie Willis, and some other guy who annoys me as well, from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. So buckle in. And before I forget to pimp this out, do go over and give a like and a subscribe to Justice is a Process.